Well, anybody joining, welcome to the Equalized Digital Changelog live stream. We try to have these, we are now moving to a cadence of doing these each month, and that way we can ensure that we have new, cool features, exciting features for Accessibility Checker to show you. And for those that don't know, the Accessibility Checker is an automated accessibility scanning plugin for your WordPress website to help you become and stay accessible. We have a full-featured free plugin on the WordPress plugin repository that you can download for free and run checks on a per post or per page basis. And we have, for more pro users, we have a pro plugin that extends those features to allow for full site scanning and for site-wide management of your issues, which is why we're here today. We're going to talk about some new exciting site-wide management features. And we also have several add-ons that go with our pro plugin. We have an audit history plugin for tracking your accessibility over time, a multi-site add-on for managing your accessibility checker stats and licenses at the network level of a WordPress multi-site, and an export add-on for exporting your accessibility data to CSV files. So today, like I said, we are talking about a brand new feature that was a massive undertaking by our team, which we are calling the Issues Explorer. And a little bit about the naming of that, William.
I didn't pick the name. Our
No,
friend Claude helped pick that name.
our friend Claude picked the name.
No, I think it does make sense. I
Yeah,
described what the feature is, and it came up with this. So I think it
right.
does makes a
Yeah,
lot more sense than Open Issues, which was the original work in progress title.
right. So in a nutshell, what this is a new centralized global management application for your whole site. It replaces what William said, our open issues panel, but it also replaces not just our open issues panel. It replaces our fast track panel, our uh, global ignore panel, and our ignored panel. So we used to have four different pages within accessibility checker where you would have to go back and forth to manage all of these things. We've taken feedback that we've gotten over many years of having that feature, probably like 5.5 years worth of feedback on what works in the open issues panel and what doesn't work, what is performant, what's not performant. We've collected all that feedback, all of our own internal uh, feedback about it, and taken that and constructed it into a single application where you can manage all of those things in one place that is more performant, that gives you more tools to be able to audit the accessibility of your website. So, without talking about it too much, why don't we dive in and actually start taking a look at it?
Yeah,
So,
well, I actually did pull up the old view if we
okay,
want
yeah,
to show that first. So
yeah. Let me switch over to your screen, William.
yeah, so ignore the
The color
awkward
scheme.
theme. This is the only way I can know which site is which. But yeah, so this is the old open issues page. So the previous page broke issues down by the check, sorted by severity, and then a secondary sort by count. So on this test website, I have close to 200,000 issues randomly generated. They're not real problems, but so if I click on this, a slider is present. It will load up the individual issues for this single for that single check. So this is what the page looked like. We have two tabs at the top: individual open issues and fast track. We have some breadcrumbs to get back to the open issues page, some information about the check itself, the number that we have for a slider present header, the data about manual checking this specific issue, and down here in the table below we have a whole lot of mostly randomly generated issues, but some of these issues are legitimate. So this is one side of the original setup we had. We also have this dismissed issues page, which I'll click here in this sidebar under our top level menu. So because I have so many issues on this site, it's kind of slow. So now these are all the issues that are dismissed. So the page looks very similar to what the initial open issues page looked like. We have two tabs, individually dismiss issues and global dismissals, some information about what a dismissed issue is. And then again, we have the list of checks sorted the same way, firstly by severity, and then secondly by count. So if I were to click in any one of these issues, so I'll pick this one, zoom in and scaling disabled. Every time you click this, it does a fairly intensive query to generate this list of the specific issues for each of these pages. So this is effectively what the old system looked like, behaved like. We do have, in the dismissed issues page, we do have global dismissals. I'll click on that and it will bring up a list of everything that has already been globally dismissed on this website. And as you can see, it isn't the quickest because the query to generate is based on this code snippet. And it's a very slow query when you have hundreds of thousands of issues. But there's this drop down on this page where you can change between posts, pages, and a custom post type called archive pages. But if I were to go all the way to the right hand side of this column, we have a drop down that opens up details about each individual affected code snippet. This is the check that fails, improper use of link. There is 32 instances of this code block, and you can click on this view pages link to access any of these pages. It also lets you know who ignored the issue, when, and there's an action button at the end here to stop the global dismissal. So I'm going to click on that. It changed quickly because there's 32 instances that have now been unignored, I guess, or reopened. Yeah, so this is effectively the old experience.
Right.
Do you have any comments on this, Steve?
Well, I mean, this is where we've been for 5 years. And like I said, you can see as William was going through and clicking on different panels, when you dismiss things, you now need to navigate to a different panel to find that issue that was dismissed. When you globally ignore, you got to go to a specific page. And, this is where we've been, and we've derived a lot of our decisions on where we're going based on all this past feedback, all of our own. In software there's a term called dog fooding, and which is basically eating your own dog food, eating your own or using your own software, right? And which we do a lot in our audits and our remediations. And some of these things were kind of born out of our own desire to improve this UI. So instead of going back and forth between 4 different pages, we've now unified this into one single experience.
Yes, so I can pull that up in 1 second, but let me just walk through. So I'm going to go back to the open issues page. And when this page loads, I'm going to head to fast track using the tabs. So what I'm planning to do right now is dismiss a specific issue on a post, or globally dismiss a bunch of issues on a specific post. And I have clicked this fast track tab. That's just how long this query takes to generate the details. Now I'm going to use the drop down to change over to posts. And the page will reload. Once the page reloads, the affected code snippets will be ones that are only found in the post type. And any day now it's going to load. Yeah. So on the right hand side of the table, we have the review issues action. Pulling it up, clicking on this global dismissal, and now I've globally dismissed that issue. So keep in mind how long that took, and we will see how to do an equivalent operation in the new system.
Yeah.
Did you have a screen up, Steve, or do you want me to?
I have one up, unless you want to show yours. Would you?
I do have this, but this is an unfair comparison because this website is brand new and only has 36 issues.
Well, I've got one with about 10,000. So we will move on from William's lovely purple color scheme that looks like some of our listeners are
people like the purple.
Like the purple. Yeah. So Amber says the the old experience was really slow on large websites. So
yes,
this is the
we've
challenge.
done a lot to improve that, specifically with large websites in mind.
Right. And this is a huge challenge with doing what Accessibility Checker uniquely does inside of WordPress that I haven't seen many other solutions even attempt to do, right? Whereas most solutions that check for accessibility are doing it one page at a time. They're not storing this all of this data at a site-wide level for you to have everything there to manage, to track over time, to make sure that you're staying accessible, right? And it was time for this refresh. It was time to look at performance because this could be run on a website with a few hundred issues, or it could be run on a website with 1 million issues. And but without yapping on too long about performance, let's look at it. I can pull mine up, William, but I need to reshare. Let's switch back to our lovely faces here. And I need to reshare the correct window. Share window.
But while you're pulling that up, I guess I can talk about. Oh, well, you beat me. I was going to talk about some new features that might exist in this new review that weren't possible in the old one. Specifically, this came up.
Lost William. 1 second. Sorry, I dropped you, but we're back. All right, what were you saying?
Yeah, so we had a customer ask recently how they could dismiss a specific type of issue on a specific page. And while that was technically possible in the old view, it was sort of cumbersome. Now, the new view, that makes, bulk dismissals or reopens as well are incredibly easy.
Yeah, totally. So what I've pulled up is my screen here, and this is a test site, so these are not necessarily legitimate. I mean, they're probably legitimate issues, but it's a lot of testing, and it's not super real data. But what we've done, and we've taken those 4 pages, we've unified them into this new application, which we're calling the Issues Explorer. And like I said, Williams AI came up with that name. At first, I was like, I don't know about that name, and then Amber Hines, our CEO, is like, I like that name. And I was like, okay, well, we're sticking with it. It fits. It works.
Yeah.
So if you have Accessibility Checker installed, this now lives in one tab called Issues Explorer. You click on it, and this is a single page React app. So this now gives you an application feel rather than kind of like the more traditional WordPress admin feel. And this opens the door for us to be able to do, all kinds of unique things to be able to filter out issues. So a high level, I'll go through a high level overview, and then I'll let William kind of go a little deeper on things. But kind of a high level overview, the layout is pretty straightforward. It should be intuitive. At the top, we have kind of your controls. We've got these tabs at the top to be able to go between open, dismissed, or showing all states. So this kind of takes we had the open issues page before, and we had the dismissed page before. We now do that all in one place, and we default to the open state. And you can click on this, and with one click, you're instantly looking at all of your dismissed issues. And if you want to see everything all together, you can just click on all. Moving down to kind of some of the tools here and filters, we have a search box, so you can search by keyword if you're looking for something specific. Like, of course, I've got a lot that say test, and I can just filter these down by test. And then we have our filters. We have groups, which we will discuss here in a minute, and we have display settings. And then down below is the table of issues with the default columns shown, and some pagination and some counts, pagination counts as well. So that's kind of the overall layout of it. And we do have a panel that will, if you click on something, that will show per instance, per issue details and actions that can be taken. So one big thing that we wanted to do in this is not necessarily decide all the things for you. We wanted to kind of curate a default view and then give you, the user, tools to be able to then make this table look and function the way that you would like it to function. So we could first go through filters. Do you want to go through filters, William?
Yeah, sure. So in the toolbar, we now have this filters button. You click on it, it opens a panel, which contains a search bar as the first thing. You can filter, or you can search for any individual filter you want that exists here. We have a set of, I think it is 10 different filters, like the status, severity, type. You can also search by WCAG level or filter by WCAG level, content type, post statuses, which has been a common request. People want to know whether issues are on published pages, draft pages. So now it's incredibly easy to do that. Check is the role name. You can search by filter by landmark, whether things are globally dismissed, or the fixed status. So we do have fixes as a feature in both free and pro that can all fix certain types of issues we're certain about. You can now toggle those fixes or find issues that are potentially auto fixable with our built-in fixes using these filters.
Yeah, can you expand on that a little bit? Why we actually added this fixed status?
Well, so when you're in an individual post and scanning the post, you can automatically fix an issue right there from the sidebar. You can click on the issue, you will be presented with details telling you whether a fix is available or not, and you can toggle it right there. But if you are using the Pro plugin and potentially full site scan, you might not be aware of all the issues that are available to be automatically fixed.
Right.
So you can come here and you can see how many there are. You can also see which ones don't have a fix or which ones have a fix which has been enabled. And if that's been the case, you will probably need to run a full site scan to get the number down. Coming here with this filter will let you know whether that's the case or not.
Right. So it's just to help identify what's been fixed, what can be fixed, and apply those fixes. Cool. And you can filter by whether or not an issue is globally dismissed, right?
Yes, correct.
And not active. So a secondary component to the filters that we've added in was we wanted to not, because of course this is the filters panel is like a button that you click open a panel that you then can make your selections. Like I only want to view open issues that have a severity of high, that are that are problems, um, that are WCAG, AAA, although there are none. Let's go with single A. So I can curate this list instantly with the click of a button, and it filters. Like William has done an amazing job of making this real snappy, and um, to be able to get to this quick. But the secondary piece of this is when you close out the filters panel, you then don't there's a little blue bubble next on the button that tells you how many filters you have enabled, but you don't have context to what they are without reopening it. So what we did was we expanded the filter capability into what we call a filter bar, which is if you ever use like GitHub or things like that, where you can set kind of a query, you can define uh, the query parameters real quick in a bar. So you can see, based on the selections that I made in the filters dropdown, I now have a filter bar that shows status is open, severity is high, type is a problem, WCAG is A. And if I go back into the filter panel and I go to type, and say I want problems and needs review, which is basically, would cover all the issues. You can now see that the type it says type is any of two, right? So we show you that there are multiple, but if there's more than one, we do just break that down to a number. So at a glance, this gives you really good context to what the current filter state is of your issue list here in the Issue Explorer. But
while you're doing this, I do want to call out something that might not be entirely evident as you filter things. So the tabs at the very top of the toolbar, the numbers actually do update as you filter things. So you can now see there are no dismissed issues that meet these filters.
yes,
And, open and all are the same number because, of course, they are. There's no dismissed issues open.
right.
They're all open.
And that's a great point, because I've selected my status as is open. So I have the visual indicator of the filter status. Uh, the quick tab bar at the top, the count is updating, like William said, to account for this current filter state. But I can also dismiss this filter right from the filter bar. I can just click it and it's gone, and now it's refiltered. But if I wanted to add another severity into here, I don't have to go back to the filter drop down. I can just click right on the bar here, and it automatically opens it, and I can hit I want medium and high severities to show, and it instantly updates. So all of our filter bar filters are just quick links to get back here and refilter these any way you see fit, dismiss them, and add new ones. So if I click this plus button in the filter bar, I can then just, say I want to post status of draft, and I click that, and now it's down here in the filter bar. And maybe I didn't want draft, maybe I want draft and publish. I just click right on it. Quick actions back to the filters. I can add more here, remove these, and clear them all out to go back to my default state. So that's the filters. We've put a lot of work into this UI and this UX to try to make this a very pleasant experience for those auditing and remediating issues. And so we didn't want to just show you just a list of issues, because in the pages that William showed you earlier in the live stream from previous versions of the plugin, that you were able, even though they were 4 different pages, you were able to filter out the issues into groupings, like our fast track. So we've removed the fast track in favor of of using groupings, because what it does is it allows us to work within this singular list of issues, but then we introduce what is commonly called swim lines or swim lanes inside of the table here to divide things out. Do you want to talk through groups a little bit, William?
Yeah, sure. So the group view that you are seeing right now is none. There is no grouping applied in this table at all. The issues are listed as they're discovered in the database, not necessarily as they're discovered on your website. So there is no group at all on the default view. We provide 2 additional groups if you want to swap or open the group thing. So
Yeah,
yeah,
so
3 options in total. None, which is what you see as the default. We also have check type, which is grouped by the accessibility rule, the check. And we also have a code snippet view. Code snippet view is equivalent to what fast track was in the old system, and the check type is effectively what you would see on the first page of both open issues and dismissed issues in the previous system.
cool. Yeah, so let's drill down on each one of those a little bit. We've already gone through kind of the no grouping state, which is your default state here. Um, if we go to check type, like William said, this is like the default initial page that you would get to when you went to open issues or to dismissed issues before. And
And this is sorted equivalently as well. It is sorted by severity followed by instance count. So
right.
this is sorted in the same way the old view was.
Yes. So on the left side, you can see that, I've got an icon for the type, which is this is a problem, and then I have the check title, which here it's an ambiguous anchor text, and then I have the severity, critical, and then to the right, we've added a little bit more context to how deep these issues go. And we have instances and pages. In this one, we have 692 instances and 658 pages. So that kind of shows you the depth of the effect of the issues related to this rule. So what you'll notice is that these are actually what we call swim lanes, and they can be opened. So when I open one, I now see all the issues related to ambiguous anchor text within the swim line here. So I don't have to go to another page to manage these. They can just be viewed right here. And William, do you want to make a note about performance here?
Yeah, so as far as performance goes, in the old system, all of these issues would be retrieved at page render time, which, when I was going through this earlier, you could see with a lot of issues, the pages are slow to render because the query is intensive. In this new system, we actually only query for the top level items, the checks. We do the counts, but we don't retrieve all the data about each individual instance within these checks until you open the swim lane. Now
Yeah.
there is a setting which we'll get to later, which changes that behavior a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but by default, these only load when required, and pulling the individual instances is the intensive part of the old query. Now we offload that till when it is required, meaning that this page can load in 2 seconds versus 10. It
Right.
is an incredible difference in terms of performance.
Yeah, I am on a local site here, but if you can catch it, you can kind of see the loader for just, a split second when I click on this, when it queries for the issues related to this check.
And there is some options that allow you to change how many items that appear. If you're on a shared host that might be having issues retrieving all these issues, you can actually reduce the number that it finds per
Yeah.
lane.
So we can do that in the screen options. This is, your traditional screen options in WordPress. There's 2 pagination settings here, one for items per page and one for max instances per group. So these default to 20. If I increase this to 50 now and I hit apply and I open this up, I will now see 50 issues within each swim lane under each check. One thing to be mindful about this is the more you add, the more performance implication that there may be. For display purposes, the performance isn't too much of an issue because we do have a max here of 500. Where you might notice some implications on performance is if you're running a bulk dismiss action, it may take a little bit of time if you're viewing 500 issues or dismissing 500 issues at a time. So, and I'm going to set this back to 20. And so, yeah, so this is the group by check type. And of course, when clicking on any of these, we'll open the same side panel, which we will discuss in depth here in a little bit. All right. So the next group order is group by code snippet. And as William stated, this is kind of the replacement for the fast track. And these are swim lines as well, or lanes as well. And you can see in each lane, you can see the code snippet, and you can see the severity. And what's interesting about this first one that I'm showing here too is that a code snippet can actually pertain to multiple, rule checks. And we wanted to kind of give you a little indicator that what we're doing is we're servicing the most critical severity level, which here is critical, the highest severity level. But there actually is a severity level probably lower than this that pertains to this as well. So if and then to the right of the lane here, we show the number of instances and the number of pages affected by this. And then we do have an action on this one, which is a dismiss all. So the cool thing about the fast track was that it allowed you to create global dismissals. So when you would dismiss all, when you choose to dismiss all, you're choosing to set a pattern that when any new scan happens, if this comes up again, that it automatically does not get flagged as an issue. It automatically gets dismissed. So you can still do that. If I open up the lane here, you can see that, we can see the issues that pertain to that code snippet as well. But one thing you will notice is that there's multiple checks here, right? We got improper use of link, we got ambiguous anchor text, and the neat thing about the filters when we're in these grouped views is I can filter those out as well. So if I wanted to go to check and I only wanted to see improper use of a link, let me search improper use of a link. I can actually filter out and only see those in the code snippet view as well. So your filters will work across all of the grouped views. If I go back to filters and go down here and hit reset filters, it goes back to normal. So again, these columns are all the same that you would see, although we have pulled the code snippet out of being showed in the grouping because it's here at the top. Let me go through the dismiss action. So if I hit dismiss all on this, so this is essentially creating what a global dismissal, and it doesn't just dismiss it, but it actually tracks this and dismisses any other issues that come up about this again. You're presented with this with just a dismiss modal here that shows the code snippet at the top and describe a descriptor, and then dismiss as, which is a feature that we recently added to the plugin to be able to give a little more context to why you're dismissing an issue. So if I hit dismiss, you're now see I get a success message, issue dismissed successfully, and remove global dismissal. So you can now see that this is a global dismissal and that I can actually remove it. And if I close this and now look at the lane again, you can see that I have a little badge here that says it's globally dismissed, and then the button now says remove dismissal. I can click on this and hit the remove dismissal, and I'm back to it being all those issues not being globally dismissed.
Yeah, so now that we've looked at this, can we do a little bit of an experiment? Before I went to open issues, fast track, change to the post type, and globally dismissed an issue. Can you just do that? So just reload the page.
So if I go to Issue Explorer, so you want me to globally dismiss an issue?
Specifically a post issue.
Specifically a post issue.
Yes.
So if I only want to see post, I'm going to go down to filters, and I'm going to filter by content type. I'm going to choose post, and then I'm going to you want me to do a global dismissal? Is that what you said?
Global dismiss.
Yeah. Yeah. So then I'm going to filter by code snippet, and then I can see this is an issue here for this code snippet, which is
it's the same one we were just
same one we were talking about, improper link, ambiguous anchor text, and I can hit dismiss all and then hit dismiss issue, and it's gone.
Yeah, so you talked through that quicker than it took me to load half of the pages in the old system.
Right. Yeah. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make this quicker and a unified experience to where you can do all the things in one application, not have to jump around pages. And when you
to do this in the old system would require 1, 2, 3, 4 page reloads.
Right. With a performance time load issue as well, right?
Yes, on every one of those pages.
Right. So we're being much more mindful about what we're querying when we're querying it to make sure that you get a real snappy user experience. Cool. So I'm going to reset my filters here. I'm going to set my group back to none. So those are the grouped by categories. So now we went a little bit step further with some feedback from our own team about, what should the default columns be? Or what, does everybody prefer the same default columns? Do you need to see everything? So what we've done is we've kind of made a little bit of a decision on what we think the default columns should be, which is, page, check, affected code, the WCAG level, severity, and status. And but what we are doing now is we're putting tools in your hands for you to make that decision. William, do you mind talking about sorting a little bit?
Yep, so effectively every column you see here is a sortable column. Now, previously, in the old system, could you even sort the columns?
No.
I don't think you could. So yeah, for example, like just to take an example, maybe you want to see only AAA WCAG items, or you want to sort by WCAG, you can actually just click on the column headers now and sort by any of these column headers. And it sorts as you would expect. WCAG is best practice, A, AA, AAA, or the inverse and the other way around. You can also sort by severity. You can sort by all of the available columns. Now, what is visible on this page right now is there's a page column, check column, affected code, WCAG level, severity, and status. That isn't the only available sorts that we can apply. So in the display menu.
Well, before we jump into that, can you explain the sorting? I think we did approach this slightly different than most sorts, where most sort is like ascending, descending. You click and you toggle between the two. We actually have 3 states, right?
Yes, so we have default state. Well,
And then
which column are you talking about? I guess all of the columns
all
have
of
the
them.
default. Yeah, the default is unsorted, and that is theoretically by order discovered in this view.
Yes. So as they come in.
Yes.
So when you click once, you switch it to, ascending, I think, or descending. I always get it backwards. And you can see that the arrow turns to an active state and it's pointing up. And then if I click again, it goes to descending and the arrow is pointing down. And then if I click a third time, it goes back to default sorting. So I will go back and I will sort this again. So we have one sorted here. So you can continue on with the display settings, William.
Yeah, so these columns here that are all sortable are the default columns that we have chosen to make visible. There is other columns available. Anything that is available as a filter should feasibly be available as well as a column. So we have in the display dropdown, we have layout options first, which we will cycle back to, but expand groups by default is for the swim lanes. Below that, we have the column options, which check, affected code, landmark, WCAG level, type, severity, content type, and post status. And each of them are available to be toggled on or off as desired. You lay this out how works best for your current workflow. And some people's workflow might change depending on what they're auditing, what type of pages they're trying to fix. So now you have the freedom to just pick and choose what you see and when. And the column sorts are remembered. So if you come back to this page later on, these same columns will be set as by default. So you don't need to reconfigure it every time you revisit.
And those are saved at the user level?
Correct. So those are user level settings. So whatever you choose your settings to be will be what you see next time. Yep. Other people will get to choose their own defaults, or they can just use whatever our default choices were. Right. And if you want to get back to that, there is two buttons at the bottom. There's the reset sort and the reset display.
So when I hit reset sort, it clears all sorting. And then if I hit reset display, it goes back to the default column settings, all the default display settings. So you saw me toggle all of these columns on, which start to be a lot of columns. And what happens is you end up with some horizontal scrolling in the table. And we added a little bit of a design embellish here to kind of give you context. And this was kind of a request that came in from Amber, and I think was a very subtle and elegant way to kind of convey to a user visually that this table, there's more to this table. So if I scroll over, you can see now that I can see all the columns, and actually the shadow kind of shows on the other side now, since there's more table beyond that. And if you're in the middle, it'll show on both sides. If I go back to display settings and I toggle them all off, you'll notice that there actually are two columns that we don't currently allow to be turned off, which is page and status, because those are kind of the two base level pieces of information you need to understand what is going on here at all. So without those, you would just have a blank table, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense not to have these as just base columns that can't be removed, because even with just the page and status columns, I can tell, well, this page has some issue. I don't know exactly what it is, but I could decide to use my filters as a way, like if I wanted to go in and see only ambiguous anchor text, I can see that, and I've got it filtered, and I can see that that's the filter, so I have context to what it is, even though I don't have the column open, right? But I can go back in if I really wanted to see that in the column. I can turn that back on. So this puts a lot of the power of how this table outputs and looks in your hands, and it gets saved. Your preferences get saved in your user table, your user settings, and each user can now curate their own experience when using the Issue Explorer. Did we want to touch on the layout now, or was that later?
While we have the display settings open, let's have a quick look at it. But to showcase this, you're actually going to need to change the group type to something that has swim lanes. This setting does only pertain to swim lanes.
Yep. So in the display settings, I can expand groups by default. I can check that on. So what that means is, I don't have to open all those recordings. They'll all just be open when I go to the page.
Yeah,
So,
and there is a subtext there that does warn that there could be potential performance implications if you have a very large website doing this. Now, I have mitigated some of those performance concerns. You might be able to see it depending on how slow Steve's website is.
Yeah. So what he's talking about is that they will load, they don't all, each grouping doesn't all load at once. They will load one after the other. Let me go ahead and open up code snippets. So you saw a little bit of a loader, but it went really fast. On a live website, on a live server, you probably will notice this a little more, especially if you have lots and lots of accessibility issues. But if I go in, you can see that they're all open now.
Yeah, every swim lane is open, and they are, honoring what the pagination numbers are. So each one of these issues is capped to 20. I think you had your set.
That's the default. Yeah.
So every one of these code snippets opened. So there will be up to 20 as the default code snippets on this view, and each one might contain up to 20 instances inside each one. So when Steve loaded this page, each of the instance groups loaded back to back, one after the other. And by the time you scroll to the end of this list, they should ideally all be loaded. But as I said, if you're on a very large site, it might take a moment for these to load in. Now, that doesn't block you interacting with other things already. This does happen in the context of a page thread. So the page will load as fast as it feasibly can, and the individual instances will load afterwards. So you can interact with issues while it is doing that in the background. No problem. So you no longer actually need to wait in the previous system, you would need to wait till all of this is gathered and rendered before you could interact with the page, before the page would even load. Now the page will load as fast as it can, or the data, and supplementary data will load in later.
Yeah, so an interesting thing to note here while we're here, if you hit the max number of issues in a group, it does show a message in the table footer here. It says showing up to 20 instances, limited reach, increase max instance per group in the screen options if more exist. So this feature is not released yet. So we're showing you a pre-release, but we do have a feature that we're going to add to this, hopefully before we launch. But it will be a link here that will allow you to view all issues related to the grouping. And what it'll be is you'll click the link to view all the issues. And what it'll do is it'll grab those and it'll switch back to the none group, and then it'll update with a search parameter in the search here, with a code ID to actually filter this whole list by all those issues. That way you can see all of them if there's like 5,000. You're not limited to 20, and you don't have to increase your pagination size. So I think that's how we're going to do it. What did you call that, William? In the search, like a flag or
some kind of custom flag, like a replacement value.
like snippet. with an ID of something, and then it'll search by that.
And if people are used to using the advanced search queries on Google, it will work very similar to that.
Yeah.
I won't expect anyone to manually type it in, but it could be manually typed in if needed.
Right. Cool. So that is the display settings and the sorting. And I don't know if we mentioned, but just a side note that sorting works per grouping as well. So you can sort within groupings just the same.
Yeah, and because this sorting is actually handled by React wherever feasible, no page reloads required, no requests are needed to the server. It sorts just the live data that's already on the page. So
Right.
it's basically instant.
Cool. So we've gone deep on this search, this filtering, the display of this table, right? But how do I get to remediating? How do I get to fixing things, right? So what you'll notice in the table, if I switch back to the default view here, you can see when I hover, I get a little bit of a highlight on the the border left and on the background here that these can be clicked. And what we're doing is we're making each issue in the table a single action issue at this point. We did kind of get a little verbose with things on our end, trying to bring like quick action features into the table row itself. But we kind of felt like we were kind of mixing kind of the UI into, what is for identifying issues and what is for taking action on issues. So we've moved everything into a side panel where all actions can be taken. The action you can take here is to click on a row, and by removing quick actions within the row, we remove some accessibility concerns with having a clickable area with links inside of it, and there's a lot of things in regards to keyboard users that you have to consider when you do that. So we've simplified that a little bit here with this current version. And if I go ahead and click on one, it brings up this, what we call the side panel. And if you've been using our sidebar that we released several months back on the single issue page, this will feel familiar, because what this actually is this is the single issue modal that can be found when going through your issues on from the sidebar. So what we've done is we've unified the UI between these two places, so that when you're there and you're here, it's a familiar experience. You know what to do. These UI components feel familiar.
Yeah, and just for the nerdy people involved, they're not just familiar. These are actually the exact same React components that are used in the model. They are exactly the same. If one gets changed here to improve something, the model gets that same improvement.
Yeah, totally. So what you're looking at in the side panel here is at the very top, you have an issue ID. And to the top of the bar here, you have the close button to close the panel. And the reason why we chose a panel that overlays instead of going to like a full page single issue page is because we want to encourage speed and context when you're remediating. Like here, I'm on this one, I click on it, right? I can see the active state of the issue below the kind of the screen here, but I have my issue to the side and I can just click out and keep going back and forth. I'm quickly going back and forth between issues and the panel where I can take action on the issue. And the issue panel is off to the right side to kind of give you a split view here. And for just, I felt like this was a very quick way to be able to do this. And it turned out, I think William did a great job. It turned out real nice. The moving down, you have what, the same stuff that you see in the single page issue modal. You have like the check name, you have the WCAG success criterion, you have a show explanation, which expands, and you can see why it matters and how to fix it. And then you can click over to our documentation for more in-depth documentation on how to resolve the issue. You have the affected code, which is a code box that is now highlighted code to help it be more readable to you. And you have a dismiss issue accordion, where you can choose to dismiss the issue, choose a dismiss reason, add a comment, and dismiss it right from here. And you can reopen it if it already has been dismissed as well. If I close this, and I can reopen it. And this all happens like just a React app. Is it all, you can see it, you can see the status change, when you close out of this or look behind it. In the right sidebar of this panel, we have some statuses. It tells you, is this a type, the type, is this a problem, or is this something I need to review? What's the severity? The WCAG level, the landmark. If I click on the landmark, it'll actually open the front end highlighter and highlight the landmark that this issue is within. I can view this on the page, which will highlight the issue. Is it having a hard time finding this one?
It's behind the highlighter.
Oh.
You'll need to move it.
Look! I can grab our highlighter panel and move it around.
Yep.
And I can dock it too, so it doesn't get in the way. And then you can edit the page. I can click here and it'll jump over to the page edit. And we're doing all this in an effort to make things quick. All your actions you take them right here. All the information you need to remediate it can be found here as well.
Well, speaking of quickness, because of the way this is set up with this React router, you actually can copy paste this link from the address bar and give this to someone else. Yeah. And they will land right here on this exact issue.
Yeah, so if I click on the little copy icon, if I click that, it says copied. So now I have a link. And if I paste that link in and hit return, it's a direct link to that single issue. So this is a whole new feature we didn't have before. In the old panels in the old pages that we went through before, everything was within a table. It didn't have like a single issue view. But now with this direct link, you now have the ability to copy this, put it in your remediation report, send it to a developer, say, here, can you work on this issue, attach it to a GitHub or Linear or Basecamp issue. So we are now allowing that deep linking, and it's a small feature, but we think it goes a long way. Cool. So that is the side panel. I think that's it on the side panel, right, William? Oh, well, actually, no, we can go a little further. Yeah. If I look at something that pertains to an image, you can see now in the side panel that I do have an image view here, and it displays the images. It's kind of not the best image, but like that's a better image of the clouds with the airplane flying into this beautiful sunset, pink sunset. A little descriptor for those listening. And of course I've got the dismiss issues here as well, but I think what William was getting ready to touch on a little bit was fixes, right?
Yes.
So if I filter down, if I go to my filters and I go to filter status and I choose has available fix, so I can see items that have an available fix. If I click on one of those, and this one beautifully has another image of a beautiful castle. Maybe this is a castle in Scotland, William. Maybe
this looks like my house.
This is William's castle. This is where he lives and writes all of his React code.
We only live in castles.
You can see now I have the fix accordion here as well as the dismiss. So this is kind of a panel with all of the available columns that are what we call sections that could be here. So fix, you want to walk through the fix a little bit?
Yep. So anyone who has used the sidebar and seen the model, this looks familiar. This is exactly what you would see inside the model. So this particular issue actually is interesting in the sense that it has two potential fixes. Now these would be mutually exclusive. But yeah, you can toggle this fix on here, click save. It will not reload the page because you don't have the editor context. But if you were using this in the individual editor, you would be able to scan the page immediately. It isn't possible here. So can you just pick either one of these fixes, Steve, enable it, and we can talk about one of the other fix features. So yeah, now that fix is enabled, feasibly these issues would go away on the next page scan.
Mm-hmm.
We can't scan the page here, so if you want to X out out of the drawer, reset your filters, and then use the other toggle.
Reset.
Yeah, reset the filter, and then use the other fix toggle that says has fix enabled, or has enabled fix. So now these fixes are enabled. If you were to visit the individual editor page for one of these, it should actually go away. So this is the actual use case for having has enabled fix.
Yeah,
so
and it
did. Probably, yeah, those numbers went down by 1.
Right.
Or if you now know that you probably want to run a full site scan to clear these issues out, but you've verified that one of them does get fixed by enabling it, and feasibly all these issues are now resolved.
Yeah, so if I refresh this, you can actually see that issue is gone because it was actually resolved as a result of the fix. A thing to note too about fixes a little bit is that fixes, while we do surface fixes in this view, at the issue level, that fixes are a global setting, and enabling a fix for this or for or for add a warning when link opens in a new tab, these actually do get enabled globally, so they will fix all issues that pertain to this. And I will put in a side note on that as well, that when our fixes are applied and you rescan the page, it rescans to ensure that our fix actually worked, and if it didn't, it stays an issue.
Yes.
So you're not blindly adding a fix that might work. You're adding a fix that should work. But if for some reason it doesn't work, the scanner will still catch it and will still identify it as an issue, even if the fix is enabled. It only goes away as long as the fix enabled actually works. And it should work. But, given websites being built in many ways and how JavaScript can lay on top of a website, there's infinite possibilities that could happen, or things that could get in the way of that fix actually doing what it's meant to do.
Yeah, like for example, we had a support request open this week from someone who has a headless WordPress site, and there's some particular complexity there with our scanner and these fixes. So, where we do our best to make sure they're going to work, we can't cover every output of every website. We try our best, but that is why we verify. And if you were in the editor, we would verify immediately. But in this view, we can't.
Right.
Actually, I haven't told Steve this yet, but I tested, and it turns out we can, and that might be a follow-up feature. We might verify that fix right away.
Yeah, cool. So, you've seen we're trying to handle errors throughout the application. We're handling empty states, like if I search for, weird, like weird words and stuff, like empty state, we try to show you this nice little check icon that no issues are found. And we're trying to make sure that we've gone through some extensive internal accessibility auditing to make sure that this Issues Explorer is keyboard operable, that we're following accessibility best practices and standards and meeting color contrast and WCAG requirements, because we don't just make accessibility tools. We try to practice what we preach and make the tools that we are creating for accessibility accessible themselves, and further creating the reach that these tools can have for any person of any ability to be able to use them.
So I think there is one feature that we haven't actually covered yet: the bulk actions.
Yeah.
So
walk us through bulk actions, William.
So the specific person who reached out recently had a very specific requirement for bulk actions, which was the inspiration for even adding this feature. So can you use your filters to find all the ARIA hidden on a specific page? Doesn't matter which page.
I'll
check
ARIA hidden.
And
Okay.
on any specific page. That doesn't matter which one, but let's just pick a. You can use the filter as well.
On a specific page?
Yep. Oh, no, you can't filter it from there. You can end the search.
I need to search, right? Like, yeah. I was like, huh? What? So if I just do like screen reader, so this page.
Correct. So now this is all of the ARIA hidden issues on this specific page. Let's bulk action on them. Let's dismiss all of these issues.
So I check the checkbox in the table header.
Yes, and that selects every visible item, and a new operation appears above this, which says there's 3 issues selected. There's 2 operations that you can take here. You can either dismiss them or reopen the selected, and there's also a clear selection option. So yeah, let's just dismiss these 3 issues. You get a model that pops up that has the same options. You can dismiss it with any one of the default reasons. You can leave a comment, and you click the button. It takes a second. Now all 3 of these issues are dismissed. So the person who needed to be able to dismiss all of a specific check type on all of a specific page can now accomplish that with the bulk actions.
Yes. And you'll notice too that like we're in the open tab here. We're using the open tab at the top, and these are now in a dismiss state. And this kind of practice follows throughout the whole application. Is that we're not taking things away when you change the state, not until an actual page re-render or page refresh. I mean, it's a single page app, so you're not necessarily going to get a page refresh. But when you change a view or status here, that then they will kind of filter back where they belong.
Yeah, and to carry that back to what the previous behavior was, when you dismissed a single issue in the previous iteration of the open issues page, the page would reload immediately and that issue would be gone. You wouldn't be able to see it. So we now have chosen to keep these. They're still selected in case you want to change your mind and reopen them. Yeah, and it's just a couple of clicks, similar pattern, model opens, you click to reopen, now they've reopened again. And you can see the state on the right-hand side of the column is open.
Yep. So that is the bulk actions. And if I reset my filters back and I go back to none here, so I did state that like we're trying to make the table a single action, right? Which is basically get to the panel to take actions. Whereas this bulk dismiss has kind of an unintended benefit to being here, is you can actually dismiss an individual issue just by clicking on the checkbox in the first column of the table and then hitting dismiss selected. So you actually can do one at a time if you really would like to. You can see that one's dismissed. Now you can click on this and go into the panel here and reopen it. And take note of this, William.
Yep, I did.
And reopen it here. So it does have kind of a side benefit, and you can go through and just manually pick the ones you want and bulk dismiss. They don't have to be in order. You don't have to pick them all. Works a lot like kind of the bulk actions in WordPress kind of work out of the box. So cool. So I think that is kind of all the features of the new Accessibility Checker Issue Explorer. William and I are super excited, and the rest of the accessibility or the Equalized Digital team are super excited to get this out to you here in the next coming days, and to get this into users' hands and to get your guys' feedback on what you like and what you don't like, and we can fix things and move along based on user feedback to improve this even further than this massive improvement that we've made from the legacy open issues page. So Amber posted on here, she kind of she watches in on our live streams here to make sure that we are saying all the right
swear.
To make sure we don't swear. Yeah, saying all the right things. But Amber said, "This makes me so happy," and I think it makes me happy too. And
yeah, same. I'll be honest. I didn't use the old system very much. I found it too slow and cumbersome, and I actually created WP CLI commands to perform some of these operations to save me having to use those pages.
Yeah, developers always find a shortcut, don't they?
Yeah. I spent a whole day making a thing that I could have done in 1 minute.
Yep. So, yeah. So, better improvement, better discoverability, quick auditing, quick remediating. We're trying to continually improve the experience that you get when using the accessibility checker. William, can you give me a release number of?
You will need to update both free and pro. 1.44.1 of free, which is available right now, is a requirement at minimum for this, and in pro, I believe it will be 1.23.0.
All right. So, and just to tag on to that, the pro has not been released yet, but we are looking to release it here in the next coming days. And so hopefully by the time you watch this, if you're watching this back later on, that this has already been released. Download it.
Or actually, if someone is watching it today and would like a beta copy, reach out to me on support, and I'm happy to send that to you. I would love to get early test. As you noticed at the end, we found one singular bug. We found lots of bugs as we built this and hopefully fixed them all, but seems like maybe one or two might slip through.
Cool. Well, William, I appreciate all your work on this. Appreciate you being here today and helping me walk everybody through this. And if you use Accessibility Checker, we would just encourage you to update to the latest version. If you haven't, please give us a glowing 5-star review on WordPress.org for our plugin.
I'll even take a 4-star review if you are willing to update it to 5 if I fix your problem.
Yeah, there you go. So if anybody listening has any questions or feedback, we are always open. You can find you can find us on our website. You can find us on X and LinkedIn and many channels. So thanks everybody for being here today. And we look forward to joining you next month in the next changelog live stream. Take care.
See you.